Hello, I'm Jasmine Darman, and this is my progress so far for my studio. For those unfamiliar with my work, it's a 2D two-player game where each player first creates their characters by controlling stats. This directly affects how the player's limbs function in the game as either strong or well guarded. The main fighting is a left punch, and a left kick, right kick, in addition to blocking with punches or kicks. In multiple ways, and there are multiple ways to move, such as running, jumping, and crouching. At first, my work used pre-made sprite sheets for combat testing, which proved well visually but lacked a level of provided visual feedback from the character customization. This was changed to my own sprites that use a rig to control their animation, which allows for more animation combinations for jump hitting and crouch hitting, in addition to creating unique animations. Since last time, I rehauled all of the menu UI. Before, it was selecting limbs followed by multiple sliders. Now, you can move a dot around in visual space, a 2D axis, and control the stats between the left versus right parts of the body and lower versus upper parts of the body. This also directly controls the visible appearance of the character. Since last time, I fixed the UI to show red versus blue characters instead of both red or some parts white, some parts red. I also added in a limb visual control that works with the animations. This basically changes certain parts of the limb's width for power and the darkness of the limb for mitigation. This direct effect of the characters is the visual feedback that helps players understand what they're doing when they're altering the limb stats. I also added in fine-tuned numbers specifically when you select a limb. This allows you to modify the amount of mitigation versus power that the limb has. It also says the total amount within that specific limb. These two properties, power and mitigation, are inverse of each other, which makes it for a more simplistic slider. Both the slider and the dot can be moved around at the same time and affect the player instantly. This UI needs full controller support, but right now it allows for the dot and slider motion. Plans for this includes mapping the limbs to the buttons on the controller that are typically used during the actual fighting combat. As for the combat, not much has changed except for the visual appearance of limbs being loaded from one scene to this one. This also includes limb stat saving for the legs. The legs still do around 5 damage, but the data saved on each player is from their original choices. So that will have to add on. Finally, I worked a bit with the blocking animations to create a leg visual block and change the block mappings. Before, blocking was 2 buttons separate from the punching, but now that there's a leg block, this makes it 8 buttons in total. Now it's just going to be hold down a toggle block mode and then use the 4 buttons that are typically for combat, being punch on both sides, kick on both sides, which now becomes block on both sides with the legs. As for the feedback and continued work, the main concern right now is going to be moving away from the UI and worrying about gameplay, feel, and polish. Currently, the animations do not alter the sprites during combat. Here is an example of how this would look. As you can see, the torso slowly turning. And this will be the newer punch animation, which also is going to take a more realistic approach. It gives the sprites a 3-dimensional shifting and is more accurate to how punches and kicks usually are. I'd also like to focus primarily on the polish and gameplay feel, specifically with the calculations for actions, because sometimes they feel unresponsive or a bit delayed. Some of the actions I was trying to do was incorporate a sprite when you punch. However, this still needs some fine tweaking. This polish would also include a division of the main collider into an upper and lower body. This is to make the leg blocks and arm blocks require more skill to use properly, and gives some benefit as to positions vertically. Finally, the sounds for the games are being considered to create a cohesive work, and here's a little bit from the current menu. Thank you. so much for watching, and I'm interested to hear feedback. Thank you.